Hey everyone, Erick Stakelbeck here. Today on the Newscast, who is the most dangerous man in the Middle East? There are a few candidates, but today we will break it down to just one. That's coming up. Stick around. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. For several years, I consistently referred to Iranian General Qasem Soleimani as the most dangerous man in the Middle East. Now, as you probably know, and as we've discussed here on the newscast many times, Soleimani was killed in a U.S. airstrike earlier this year, but before his death, he was the most dangerous, most influential player in the world's most chaotic region, and for a few reasons. Number one, Soleimani had the full backing and support of Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei. Number two, Soleimani controlled Iran's terror network and its territorial ambitions in the Middle East. I'm talking Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and he controlled the push to Israel's doorstep of Iran, Shia militias, and Hezbollah. Number three, Soleimani had a hand in Iran's external terror operations. I'm talking outside the Middle East region, folks. Europe, the Western Hemisphere, and beyond. So a very, very dangerous player, the most dangerous in my estimation, because the moves that Soleimani was engineering in the Middle East, whether cruise missiles launched at Saudi oil fields, whether attacking Israel, various attempts at attacking Israel, the moves that he was behind could have sparked a major regional conflict at any moment. It's a good thing that he is dead and gone, believe me. But that very unsavory title of the most dangerous man in the Middle East with Soleimani's passing remains open right now. So who is it? We will get into it in a second. Before I do, I just want to encourage you to subscribe to the Watchman News channel right here on YouTube. Click that notification button so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we are bringing you the newscast. Plus, we've got our weekly Watchman TV show that's every Friday on TBN, every Sunday night on the Fox Business Network, and we are posting clips from the show right here on our YouTube channel, so subscribe. Okay, let's get into it. The most dangerous man in the Middle East. There was a fascinating piece published in the Daily Beast last week by Seth Frantzman of the Jerusalem Post. He's an excellent writer and analyst for the J-Post, but this piece was published in the Daily Beast. He referred to Turkey as the most dangerous player in the Middle East. And folks, it's hard to argue when you look at it. As Seth laid out in his piece, number one, Turkey under President Recep Erdogan clearly has expansionist ambitions. They are involved right now in Syria, carrying out airstrikes there, boots on the ground, killing the Kurds in Syria. Number two, carrying out airstrikes in northern Iraq, and number three, also involved in Libya in that civil war. And Greece and Cyprus should also be concerned because Turkey wants to be the major power in the Mediterranean. Remember, there have been some very important natural gas finds in the Mediterranean. I'm sure Erdogan would love to get his hands on those and claim those as well. So they are stirring things up. Erdogan also has that increasingly lovey-dovey and dangerous relationship and alliance with Iran and Russia. So that's all coming together as well. So I said Greece and Cyprus should be concerned. Syria, Iraq, Libya, of course. What about Israel? And this is really, I think, where Seth was getting at ultimately in his piece. Remember, Turkey is a NATO member, by the way, still officially a NATO member, although I call them NINO, NATO in name only. Under Erdogan, they are still under that NATO umbrella with a very powerful military. But at the end of the day, I think the main thrust of the piece is Erdogan's threats towards Israel are increasingly vicious. I mean, this has been going on for years now, folks, where he has been calling Israel a terrorist state. He vowed that annexation, which we've talked about here on the newscast, July 1st, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says, yes, Israel will exercise sovereignty over the biblical heartland, parts of the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria, also known as the West Bank, and parts of that strategically vital Jordan River Valley region. Erdogan saying, no way, we won't have it. We will not accept this. More bluster, more threats against Israel. He's been talking about uniting the Muslim world against Israel. He's been talking about taking back Jerusalem. And folks, look, again, with a powerful military like Turkey has, a NATO member, this is a very dangerous situation. If Erdogan decides to put these threats into action, all bets are off. We'll get into that more in a second, but let's look a little bit more at Erdogan and what he's all about and his ideology. He talks about uniting the world's Muslims. Folks, why does he want to do that? At the end of the day, Erdogan wants to revive the Ottoman Empire. Remember, the Ottoman Empire, with Turkey as the seat, was the home to the last caliphate, which was disbanded after World War I. Turkey was at the head of the Ottoman Empire under a caliphate which united a good chunk of the Muslim world under Turkish control. Erdogan, I believe, sees himself as a modern-day caliph or the head of a potential revived Islamic caliphate. Look, Turkey, under Erdogan, Erdogan's ruling party there, the AKP party, this is basically the Turkish version or the Turkish offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. The granddaddy of them all when it comes to terrorist organizations in the modern day is the Muslim Brotherhood. Said Qutb, Hassan al-Banna, all these Brotherhood ideologues inspired all the current day jihadi movements that we see, at least on the Sunni side for the most part. But one of the main bedrocks of the Muslim Brotherhood's ideology and belief system was the revival of the caliphate. They saw the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the caliphate, which was, again, a united Muslim state stretching from North Africa to the Middle East, even into the Balkans and beyond. They saw this as a great tragedy. They wanted to revive it. They still do today, even though the Brotherhood is a bit weakened in Egypt now, which has always been traditionally their base. They still want to revive their caliphate. And guess what? Recep Erdogan, who comes from that Brotherhood school of thought, that's what he wants as well. So a very dangerous player with, look, strong military capabilities, NATO membership, at least for now, although he is increasingly moving to the east in his vision and his set of alliances. Clearly, he's turned away from the West, the United States, Europe. Clearly, hey, Israel and Turkey once had a very strong relationship before Erdogan came to power in 2002. Turkey and Israel were allies. I know it's hard to believe now, but Turkey was secular before the Islamist regime of Erdogan came to power. And I think we can call it increasingly, folks, an Islamist dictatorship. Erdogan is oppressing his own people. He's locking up journalists at an insane rate. And think of Pastor Brunson, Andrew Brunson, that American pastor who was locked up for, I believe, at least a year, maybe 2 years. Okay, we're talking about reviving empires. There's another player in the Middle East that would like to revive an empire, the Persian Empire. I'm talking, of course, of the Iranian regime. The ancient Persian Empire was massive, stretched all across the Middle East, North Africa, into Europe. And the Iranian regime right now, as I mentioned earlier, on the march across the region, at least in their immediate vicinity, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Iran is the player. They are the most powerful entity there in those countries. And in terms of the most dangerous, we're talking danger, right? Who are the most dangerous players, plural, in the Middle East? Who could spark a regional conflict? I think that's what it boils down to, right? Who could set off this tinderbox known as the Middle East? Recep Erdogan certainly has a capability if he so chooses, but look at the most dangerous players, plural. Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, both in Gaza, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and Syria, the various radical Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, the Houthis in Yemen who are firing missiles into Saudi Arabia. These are all entities that could spark a major regional war. They're at Israel's doorstep, obviously. But who is behind all of these entities? Folks, the tentacles all lead back to Tehran. So Tehran, look, the Iranian regime, Ayatollah Khamenei, if they are controlling this vast network of terror proxies throughout the region that are striking against Israel, against Saudi Arabia, against American interests and Western interests in the Gulf, then you have to look back to Tehran as, alongside, parallel to Turkey, as the most dangerous player. Who do I think is more dangerous? I'll share in a second. But in terms of Iran and their case for this dubious title, hey, not only controlling those terror proxies, which could set off if Hezbollah fires some missiles into Israel, we could see, God forbid, a major war tomorrow. But Iran pulls those strings. Folks, I can't stress that enough. Iran is pulling the strings on all of these nasty, dangerous actors in the region, but also, hey, Iran's ballistic missile program, the largest ballistic missile program in the Middle East, alongside Syria, which is another Iranian proxy. If Assad tries to do something crazy, it's very likely he will do it at Iran's behest. He is now, look, Iran and Russia bailed him out in the Syrian civil war. Assad is essentially now an Iranian vassal in Syria. So that's another dangerous player under Iran's control. Their illegal, illicit nuclear weapons program continues. We've talked about that on recent newscasts. So, in surveying the landscape, I would say right now, Ayatollah Khamenei, who heads up the Iranian regime, who is calling the shots, who is giving the marching orders for Iran, I would say that he is the most dangerous man in the Middle East right now. He's not in the field and kind of an operational capability like Soleimani was, but Soleimani answered to Khamenei. At the end of the day, he sets the ideological apocalyptic tone for the Iranian regime. What he says goes. If Khamenei says to Hezbollah or Hamas or the Houthis or one of these various Iranian proxies to set the region on fire, they will do it because they answer to their Iranian master. And right now, the master in Iran is Ayatollah Khamenei. So right now, June 23rd, 2020, I would say it is Khamenei, but Recep Erdogan, folks, if he gets serious, and he's starting to get serious, unfortunately, you see Turkish involvement in Syria and Iraq, boots on the ground, missile strikes in those two countries, heavily involved in Libya right now across the Mediterranean, making noise against Greece and Cyprus in the region there, and making lots of noise against Israel for years now. If he gets increasingly serious, does Erdogan, and starts to put some of these threats and bluster into action, all bets are off because Turkey has a much stronger military than Iran, without a doubt. This would also create a great rupture in NATO if Turkey broke away. Again, Turkey, it's under Erdogan, it's NATO in name only, really, for the past several years. But if he makes it official, there's an official break, an official rupture, that will also send shockwaves, not only throughout the Middle East, but around the world. So a very dangerous situation. One thing to remember, Turkey's gone. Under Erdogan, at least, Turkey's gone, and it's not coming back into the Western Israel orbit. It's just not. And I'm sad to say that. I hope that changes. But right now, Erdogan has taken Turkey into a very radical, dangerous situation. We hope that changes. He could very well be the most dangerous man in the Middle East very soon. Right now, I believe it's Ayatollah Khamenei. A pretty dubious title, nothing to be honored about if you're either of those men. But it's interesting as we survey the landscape, we have to talk about these things, right? And very soberly and realistically assess the situation on the ground, how it affects Israel, how it affects, I'm here in the United States, it profoundly affects me as well. What's happening in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East. Remember, no matter where you live in the world, folks, events in the world's most pivotal, most chaotic, and most prophetic region, the heartland, the birthplace of the Bible, those events will have a profound impact on your life, no matter where you live. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, because Israel is in the middle of it, right? Surrounded by a sea of tyranny in every direction. Things are heating up. Some good signs. We see the Sunni Arab nations, which are very concerned about this growing Shia Iranian superpower coming more and more into Israel's orbit, talking about the Gulf states, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. That's a good development. But let's see what happens July 1st when Israel, it looks like, will exercise sovereignty over parts of Judea, Samaria, the Jordan River Valley. We'll see. When the U.S. Embassy moved to Jerusalem, we were told it was going to spark World War III. That did not happen. We're being told similar things about annexation or Israeli sovereignty in those regions. So we will see what happens. Keep Israel, keep the region in your prayer. I'm keeping all of you in my prayers. I hope everyone's hanging in there and enjoying the start to your summer. After a long lockdown here with COVID-19, things are gradually opening up. Let's pray that that continues and everyone stays healthy and safe. Hey, one last reminder, as I have a lawnmower, you might hear my next door neighbor going behind me, but one more reminder, our QFI Virtual Summit is coming up next week, I should say, Sunday, June 28th to Tuesday, June 30th. You can register online. You see the URL there. Be sure to join us for the QFI Virtual Summit. I'll be there. Pastor John Hagee, Ron Dermer, the Israeli ambassador to the U.S., David Friedman, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Ambassador Nikki Haley, Benny Gantz, talk radio host, Fox News host Mark Levin, many more excellent speakers. The kind of analysis you hear on the Watchman Newscast and TV show, you will get it to an even larger degree over 3 days for the QFI Virtual Summit. So be sure to register. Until Thursday, thanks for joining us today. God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace. See you soon.